week 6 of the fantasy football season, and here's every matchup I'm going to go through at the running back position. Sits as starts at the first ball game, the Washington Commanders at the Chicago Bears on Thursday Night Football. So right now in this one, I don't like any of the Commanders running backs. You don't know who's going to get the workload. You don't know who's going to get the goal line. And right now it's a situation, even with the bye week starting here this week in week 6, I don't want to deal with. So Brian Robinson, he's a sit. Antonio Gibson, he really hasn't done much. And I know McKissick's got that third down role and passing downs role in there. But right now, he's a guy I can't trust and a guy I'm sitting this week. Now to the Bears side of things. David Montgomery, he looked pretty decent in that ball game with 18 fantasy points versus the Minnesota Vikings. So I actually have him as a start this week. And Khalil Herbert, he was a hot pickup on the wire a few weeks ago. But David Montgomery, he came back quicker than most people thought in this week 5 ball game. They thought he would be out to week 6, week 7, but Khalil Herbert, he didn't get many carries, 4 carries, 11 yards, and you just can't trust him. Obviously, Montgomery, they still have faith in as the starting running back over there in Chicago. So this week here, Herbert is a sit. Now on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Leonard Fournette the last couple weeks here, he's had monster fantasy games, and he's doing it out of the backfield with a lot of catching of the football. 10 catches again in week 5 for 83 yards and a touchdown. So the last 2 weeks, tons of receptions for Leonard Fournette. He was drafted as a number 1, number 2 running back for most fantasy owners. And this week here in a plus matchup versus the Steelers, I got him as a start, obviously. Now Rachaad White is backup running back. If you're in a deeper league or you got a lot of injuries and bye weeks here, I think he's a borderline play because the last couple weeks now, he had 14 fantasy points and a lot of catches in week 4 is White. And then in week 5, another decent ball game with 770 in fantasy week. So he's getting some series. He's playing better, is Rachaad White, as he's getting playing time now here. So if you're in a pinch and you need a flex option in deeper leagues or a number 2 running back, if you're decimated with injuries or whatever, Rachaad White is a borderline start, in my opinion, this week. Now onto the Steelers side of things. Najee Harris, how could you trust him at this point? He really hasn't done anything. The last 2 weeks has been a train wreck, even with Kenny Pickett in there. And that with another tough matchup versus this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team, there's no way I'm going to have confidence in starting Najee Harris. So right now, I know you probably got no choice, but I'm not expecting a game out of him after scoring 6 fantasy points in PPR leagues. I got him as a borderline start this week. Now on to the Minnesota Vikings and the Miami Dolphins. So Dalvin Cook, we know he's a stud, coming off a 2-touchdown game. Best performance of the season here for him. He's a start, no doubt about it, versus Miami. And now Alexander Mattison, he's borderline. He's getting some series. He's working his way. And he's even getting some goal line carries as well. So right now, with bye weeks and injuries, as a number 2 back or a flex option in desperation plays, I got Madison as a borderline guy. Because if, say, he gets 30 yards and a touchdown, that's not horrible. 9 fantasy points, depending what other guys you got on your roster. So I got him as a borderline option this week. Now to the Miami side of things. Raheem Mostert, as long as he's healthy, I know he's a talented running back. No doubt about it here for Mostert. Now they're going to rely on the running game even more if Teddy Bridgewater is out. And if Skylar Thompson or if they bring a veteran in has to start. So Mostert, what a ball game he had versus the New York Jets in week 5. 18 carries, 113 yards, a touchdown, a catch for 9 yards, and a touchdown. He almost had a second one, but stepped out of bounds before halftime. So right now, he's a start. He's the bell cow over there. And now to Chase Edmonds, he's a sit this week. He's just not doing anything. 1 carry in the ball game, 2 targets. And Chase Edmonds, he might even be a drop candidate here for me. I'll hold on to him maybe one more week. But if he does nothing once again in this ball game, which I'm not expecting him to versus Minnesota, he's a guy to drop and an easy guy to sit this week. Now to the Patriots and the Cleveland Browns. Ramondre Stevenson, a monster ball game, going on over 150 yards on the ground in this one versus the Detroit Lions. So I got him as a start this week after coming over the game. And at this point, I think he's a better running back than Harris. He's a better catcher out of the backfield. Harris is banged up with a hamstring injury. I don't know if he's going to play. And even if Harris plays in this ball game, I have him as a borderline guy. So Stevenson's the guy to start. And obviously with buys and injuries, if Harris does play, I'll put him as a borderline option this week. Now to the Brown side of things. Nick Chubb, he's been a top 5 running back all season long. 5 games in a row at 100 yards or more from scrimmage. So he's obviously a stud and a start. No matter the matchup, he's matchup proof. And now to Kareem Hunt, he's a borderline guy. Kareem Hunt, another guy this season, not really doing much for fantasy owners here. I know a lot of people were big on him, but this year, Nick Chubb's getting more of the workload and more of the goal line. I know Hunt had a bounce-back game with 1470, 11 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown, 3 catches for 10 yards. but he really hasn't done much, and this is a tough matchup versus the Patriots. I give up the fourth least amount of fantasy points to running backs. Here, Kareem Hunt, I got him as a borderline guy. I'm not going to say sit him exactly, but he's also a guy I'm not 100% confident as a start this week. Now to the 49ers at the Atlanta Falcons. Jeff Wilson Jr., he's playing good football. He had over 120 yards and a touchdown. And the last 3 weeks in a row, double-digit fantasy points here for him. And another good matchup versus the Falcons. I know Tevin Coleman got some work in this ball game, but he's a guy I don't have listed on the sheet here. But he's a guy that I could have as a borderline start if you're really desperate. But right now, Wilson a start. Tevin Coleman, still got to see his workload. And he's a borderline start at best. Now to the Falcons side of things. Algier and Huntley, they pretty much split carries over there. And this is a tough matchup versus a 49er defense that pretty much shuts down a lot of offenses in all aspects of the game. We saw him shut the Rams down. We saw him pretty much shut down this Carolina Panther team. And I'm going to expect more of the same here versus the Falcons. So right here, Algier and Huntley didn't do much except pretty much split carries in Week 5 versus Tampa Bay. And they're both sits for me here this week in Week 6. Now on to the Bengals and the New Orleans Saints. So Joe Mixon, he's a start each and every week. I know he's not having the greatest of seasons, but this is a good matchup here. After we saw Penny before, he went out with the fracture in his leg, and then Kenneth Walker have big ball games versus New Orleans. So Mixon, he's a good running back, and he's an easy start this week. Now to the Saints side of things, Alvin Kamara, I know he hasn't been the same this season. I know the rib injury is definitely playing a factor for him here, but I still like the matchup decent for Alvin Kamara, and I got him as a start, especially with bye weeks and injuries here. You're just going to have to bite the bit and go with Kamara as a start. And Mark Ingram, I know he gets goal line touches. I know he gets short yard touches, but his max is 8 to 9 fantasy points, and he's a guy you can't trust even in deeper leagues or even in leagues where you got injuries. I got Mark Ingram listed as a sit this week. Now on to the next ball game, the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Giants, and I got both running backs to start. J.K. Dobbins, I know he had a great Week 4 ball game, and in Week 5, I know he didn't do much in that one versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Only 8 carries for 44 yards, but this backfield here, there's not many options over there. I know Kenyon Drake, he played some snaps in the ball game as well, but it was just the way the ball game is going, and we know Lamar Jackson is going to run the football a lot, but bye weeks in a decent matchup here, I actually like J.K. Dobbins as a start this week, and a guy I could count on as a number 2 running back. And now to the Giants side of things, Saquon Barkley got banged up with a shoulder injury in London, but he came back into the ball game, had a monster run, and then he ran one in for the end zone. And each and every week, he's a top 3 option and an easy start this week. Now to the New York Jets at the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. So right here, Breece Hall, he's starting to break out and really take away most of the work over there in New York for the New York Jets in the backfield. So Breece Hall, he's looked good, and he's a guy I wasn't high on coming into the season, but so far the last few weeks here, he's proved me wrong with 15 or more fantasy points 3 weeks in a row. But I know this Packer defense is stout. I know they stopped the run well, but Breece Hall is a guy you got to start pretty much each and every week here for this Jet team. Michael Carter, I got him as a sit, even though he had a decent ball game. But at the end of that game, a lot of garbage time versus the Miami Dolphins. And he had 10 carries, 21 yards, but 2 goal line stoppers. It was for Michael Carter, adding 2 catches for 12 yards. But this week here versus Green Bay, it's going to be a different type of ball game. And I just can't trust Michael Carter this week. So I got him as a sit. Now to the Green Bay side of things, Aaron Jones, we know he's a top running back, even though the last couple weeks he hasn't put in the greatest of performances. But you still go out there and you start Aaron Jones, especially with the bye weeks kicking in, and still a guy that's had 10 or more fantasy points in every game except one this season. Now to his teammate Corey Dillon. Dillon Week 1 looked like the better running back, but ever since he's fell off the cliff here is Dillon with his best fantasy game coming in Week 4 with 9.40 fantasy points versus New England. So right here, Week 6 versus the Jets, he's a borderline start in my opinion. I'm not going to say sit him with a lot of injuries and guys banged up, but he's not a guy that I'm going to have a lot of confidence in starting, so I got him as a borderline option. Now on to the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. So right here, this one, a lot of options in this ball game. James Robinson, he hasn't done much over the last 2 weeks. He had a plus matchup versus Houston, and he had a horrible ball game. So right now, I can't pretty much trust anyone in Jacksonville except maybe a Christian Kirk as a guy I'm going to have as a full start. No doubt about it. So right here, trust Robinson this week. So I got him as a sit now. as Travis Etienne, I got him as a borderline guy because this could be a ball game where it's sloppy and where there's a lot of third downs where these teams just got to dump the ball off if they're in third and long. And Travis Etienne actually had one of his better games of his career in Week 5 versus the Houston Texans for Etienne, where 10 carries, 71 yards, 3 catches, 43 yards. So right now, maybe he's going to start working into Robinson's workload after Robinson the last 2 weeks here has been a disappointment for fantasy owners with 2-9-0 at Philly and then Week 5 versus Houston with 5-9-0. So right now, here in Week 6, a pretty tough matchup versus Indianapolis. Robinson, I got as a sit, and Etienne because of PPR leagues here, I got him as a borderline option. Now to the Colts side of things, I got Jonathan Taylor obviously as a start if he comes back. But if he don't come back, you got Deion Jackson. I got him as a start. He looked good in the ball game. 13 carries, 62 yards. He was breaking tackles. He was getting to the second level. And he's a young running back that I think could make some plays here. So if Taylor don't play, I got Jackson as a start. And Taylor plays, he's a number 1 running back. No doubt about it. And obviously if Taylor don't play, I got Phillip Lindsay, a borderline guy. I actually had to start Phillip Lindsay in one league here. And it wasn't a horrible ball game for him. He was pretty serviceable in this one here. Was Phillip Lindsay with 8.40 fantasy points. So him and Jackson, for the most part, pretty much split over there in the backfield. And Nyheim Hines, I know he's concussed, and I'm not going to have him as a guy I'm going to count on. It looked bad, the concussion. He couldn't stand on his own 2 feet, and that was it. So Phillip Lindsay, if Taylor's out, he's a guy I got as a borderline option because he could catch the ball out of the backfield, and he's a guy that runs hard between the tackles. We saw it in his Bronco days, and we even saw it in that Week 5 ball game versus Denver. Now on to the Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks. So James Conner, if he's back from the rib injury after he left early, I got him as a start. I know his numbers haven't been great this season, but he's still a guy that could get a lot of work, no doubt about it. He'll get all the goal line work, and he's still a guy I have confidence. He's a struggling season so far here as a guy I would start. Now, Benjamin, if Conner is out, I definitely would start him. He's going to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. Darrell Williams is banged up. We don't know if he's going to play with any injury. But Benjamin, he looks like the quicker back. He can catch the ball out of the field. The only thing is protection on third down, and pass protection could be a problem. But if Conner's out, Benjamin is going to get tons of work, and he's a running back I would start. Now to the Seattle side of things, Kenneth Walker's going to be the man over there in Seattle, where Rashard Penny most likely out for the season with a broken bone in his leg. So right now, I see DJ Dallas can maybe get some playing time, or even a Travis Homer, but those are guys you're not going to count on unless you're in the deepest of leagues or desperate with injuries or bye weeks this week. So Kenneth Walker, he looked good with 8 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown. I know his touchdown was a 69-yard touchdown, but he's going to get a lot of work. He's a big physical back, and believe it or not, the Seattle team right now, they're a more pass-happy team than a running team. So right here, Kenneth Walker this week, I got him as a starting option and a nice number 2 running back to put in your lineup. So now to the Panthers and the Rams. So Christian McCaffrey, no matter the matchup, he's matchup proof, catches tons of balls out of the backfield, and he's the whole offense over there in Carolina. So this week here, Christian McCaffrey, an easy start. Now to the Rams side of things, Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, they've done nothing for weeks on end. I know Henderson had a few catches and had about 7 fantasy points in Week 5 versus the Dallas Cowboys. But right here, I know it's a good matchup versus the Panthers, but how can you trust any of these guys over here? We even saw Malcolm Brown and snaps in the backfield for this Ram team. So right here, it's a situation I don't want to be part of as a fantasy owner. So I'm sitting both Los Angeles Ram running backs. Now on to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Bills with Buffalo going to Arrowhead. So right now, Devin Singletary, he's a borderline start. He didn't do much in that ball game in Week 5, and he's an up-and-down type of player. He'll have one great week, one bad week, but it was a pass-happy ball game for the Bills. Gabriel Davis finally getting things going and back in action. After the last few weeks, he didn't do anything. So right now, Singletary's a borderline start. Number 2 back, or flex option at best, because he's still the workhorse. I know James Cook got a touchdown in this ball game, but it was garbage time when they were up already 31-3. So right now, it's only Singletary. He's borderline. And Zach Moss, a guy I'm not really going to talk about. Now to the Chiefs side of things, I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it's been a good season for him, but this is a very tough matchup. But with all the bye weeks here and injuries, I just got to go out there and start Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Even with the tough matchup, he's a better option than most guys that you're just going to throw in there and hope that they do something. So right here, tough matchup, no doubt about it. I'm not expecting much out of Edwards-Helaire, but I still got him as a start. And Isaiah Pacheco is a borderline play this week here for fantasy owners. He's looked good in a few ball games where he's had 10 or more carries with over 5 yards per carry. But right here this week, another tough matchup. And this is a ball game where it's all going to be about the quarterbacks and Allen Mahomes and about Travis Kelce and the receivers on the Buffalo Bills side of things. So right here, I don't like any of these running backs really. But I got Edwards-Helaire as a start and Pacheco and Singletary as borderline. Now to the Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Ezekiel Elliott, I'm going to put him in there as a start this week here with the bye weeks. And Elliott's still looking pretty decent, where I think he could get a goal line touchdown in this one. I'll put him as a start here versus Philadelphia. And Tony Pollard, a borderline play. I know he broke a big 50-plus yard touchdown in that ball game for the Cowboys versus the Rams. But besides that, he didn't do anything over the last couple weeks. Week 4, 1.8 point fantasy points versus the Commanders. And then if he didn't have that run versus the Rams, he didn't do anything. He would have had 4 or 5 fantasy points. I got him as a borderline play is Pollard this week. Now to the Eagles side of things, Miles Sanders, he's the guy over there in Philly. He's getting the majority of the touches. And Sanders, he's going to be a hot and cold type of play all season, I believe. And we know Jalen Hurts, he's going to steal goal line touches, but he's still getting 15, 18 touches a ball game here is Miles Sanders. He had the big ball game in week 4. We had 27 carries. And right here versus this Cowboy team, it's going to be a physical NFC East matchup ball game. I know this Cowboy defense has been vicious this year and good versus the run, but Miles Sanders is a guy that can surprise people week in and week out, and you don't know what you're going to get from him. But this week here, I got him penciled in as a number 2 running back or a flex option. And now to the last game of the week here. Monday Night Football, Denver Broncos at the Chargers. Melvin Gordon, he looked pretty decent, 13.30 fantasy points in PPR league. So I got him as a start this week. This Bronco team, they're probably going to rely on the run even more now with Russell Wilson banged up and not at 100% at starting quarterback here. So Melvin Gordon versus former team. He wants to stick it to him, I think, in this one a little bit. He's running hard. And the only thing with Gordon is the fumble issues over the last few weeks here. But he's working on protecting the football and playing better football. So I got him as a start this week. And Mike Boone, he looked pretty decent with 11 fantasy points and looked like the quicker running back, to be honest, between him and Melvin Gordon. So he'll get in there on some third downs. He'll get a couple drives where he'll get a few carries as well. So I got him as a borderline number 2 flex option this week here is Mike Boone. And now to the Chargers side of things. Austin Eckler, he got off to a very slow start the first 3-4 weeks of the season, but now he's kicked it into gear the last 2 weeks here with monster fantasy days. Week 4, Houston, 34 fantasy points, 60 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 catches, 49 yards a touchdown. And week 3 with another big ball game, 173 yards rushing at Cleveland with a touchdown, 4 catches, 26 yards, and a receiving touchdown. So Eckler, he's in midseason form. He got off to a little bit of a slow start the first 3 weeks, but this guy's a top 5 running back each week, and he's a start this week, no doubt about it. So that's every running back matchup here in week 6 that I went through for Sid's start of the fantasy football season.